Welcome to an Ecclesiastical Adventure. This is a description of a 4-day walk I did in March of this year up into the Cathedral Plateau, and this shows you where that is, in the walls of Jerusalem National Park, about 2 hours drive from Launceston. At the southern end of Lake Rowan, we follow the Mersey Forest Road and then walk in along the Moses Creek track, and the little blue line shows you some of the ecclesiastical features that we visited during that time: dean, vicar, curate, bishops, and so on. This is our first day. 3 of us went in to camp at an unnamed tarn up on the plateau. That meant going along the Moses Creek track across what used to be a nice solid log bridge, but we discovered had collapsed. However, quite manageable as long as you walk across carefully using the wire, which is what Terry is demonstrating here. Lunch break at Reed's Pool. Here's David and Diane enjoying a nice sunny break. Reed's Pool is often much more full than this. I've never seen it quite this empty, but it's a nice little spot for a break. Then we head up over the top and down to near Chapter Lake, where we can see Grail Falls, which is on this particular day was very full, flowing, and we're going to be climbing up to the left of it, in amongst the vegetation, up to the top, to the plateau, the Cathedral Plateau up the top. And from there, up the top now, we're looking across to Chapter Lake, where we've kind of come from. And from here we have to cross Moses Creek, which was quite full. That involved boots off and a careful crossing, but still quite manageable, and then making our way along the track past Chalice Lake. And after a little while walking along there, we then leave that track and head north towards our tarn, where we want to set up camp. So as we do that, we walk past a number of beautiful little tarns surrounded by pencil pine forests. Quite easy open walking in places, a bit more scrubby in other places, but still beautiful scenery to walk through. Eventually we come to our unnamed tarn, where we set up camp, and that's the view from our dining area. For the next 3 days we'll be based here, and here's Terry and Diane enjoying the dining room. In the distance is Mount Ragoona, and then each day as the sun sets, it bathes the peak of Mount Ragoona in the distance. That was our view every evening. So the next day we're heading up to Curate Bluff, and then Vicar and Dean, and then later in the day Bishop Peak and Bishop's Mitre. So this is heading towards Curate Bluff now in the distance. That's on the High Places of Tasmania list, so something we wanted to get to. Terry and David and Diane ahead of me, getting closer to the top. And once we're up there, we look back to the south to Bishop Peak, which we'll be going to later in the day. But to the north, we see our next destination, which is Vicar Bluff, and beyond it is Dean Bluff. So that's where we're headed after this. Now we're on Vicar Bluff, which is a peak of interest, it's called, on the peak of interest list. And we're looking back to further south, and now looking north again to Dean Bluff, our next destination. Beyond it is Mount Pillinger. And now this is Diane getting off Vicar Bluff. Vicar Bluff was a bit of a rocky scramble to get up to. It's a little harder than it looks, actually, but after a little while we're finally getting closer to Dean Bluff at the far northern end of the Cathedral Plateau. David and Terry almost up on top, and now looking back to Vicar Bluff and Curate and the Bishops and the Twin Spires that we'll be going to later. And then looking further north, there's Western Bluff in the distance, and then Clumner Bluff to the right. And now looking towards Lake Rowan to the east, and there's Premier Peak roughly in the centre, just on the other side of Dean Bluff. Looking down to the Mersey River, Oxley Falls is down there, the Lees Paddocks track, and hear Terry and David scrambling to get out to another little vantage point that might give a better view. But wherever you are along here, it's a long way down to the valley below, and plenty of rocks as well. Now we're looking towards Bishop Peak as we head back. That's our next destination, and you can see Mount Ossa in the distance as well, and the Gerrians to the left. So we're now on Bishop Peak itself, and that's the view north. This is looking out to Mount Ragoona from as we approach Bishop Peak as well, with Chalice Lake there in between. Now from Bishop Peak we're heading across to Bishop's Mitre. Bishop Peak is a peak bagger's peak. Bishop's Mitre is on the high places of Tasmania list. It's a nice little tarn that we walk past on the way. And now we're looking east towards Mount Ragoona again from the Bishop's Mitre, so we're starting to head back now, looking back to the Bishop's Mitre. Just a little hill really, but nevertheless a high place we had to get to. Heading back to camp, we can see Chalice Lake as we get closer to it, and with Mount Ragoona in the distance. And as we get closer to our campsite, these two little unnamed tarns appear. The one on the right is the one where our tent is located. It's a bit of a steep scramble to get down to it, although it doesn't look from there to be the case. Next day we head back up to the Bishop's Mitre. This time we're being joined by three others who've come in overnight. So we're heading up together, although we have to spend some time deciding which way to go in the mist. This is the same tarn near Bishop's Mitre that I just showed you a few minutes ago, but the next day it looks quite different in the mist. This is our group, Peter and Terry on the left, then Phil, then David and Diane, and Alex is out of the picture at this point, but this is us gathered on Bishop's Mitre. And as now we're heading towards the Twin Spires, David's taking in the steep valley we have to go down and up to get there. The bottom of that valley is this little tarn. It's quite easy walking generally, although it does require some climbing. And now this is our final climb up to the first of the Twin Spires, the northern one, on the Tasmanian Peak Baggers list. Looking now east again to Mount Ragoona, familiar sight with Chalice Lake in the distance. And now this is looking north from the northern spire, Mount Pillinger there on the left and Dean Bluff in the centre. And now looking out to Mount Ossa and Pelion East and those familiar peaks out that way. This is the actual cairn on the northern spire, the northern of the Twin Spires. And now as we head towards the southern one, our interest is attracted by this little hill out there with a cairn on top that we feel we have to try to get to. However, we're not able to because you can see a big notch about halfway along that really prevented us. We have to go back with ropes on another day. However, we get to the southern of the two spires, and now we're looking across to Cathedral Mountain. And first we deviate via a nice little tarn for a lunch break where we can get another view of Cathedral Mountain ahead of us, and beyond it the Gerrians and Mount Ossa. So that's where we're headed after lunch. And so this is now the same view of Gerrian to the left, Mount Ossa in the centre, Pelion East more to the right. That's from Cathedral Mountain from the high point. Here's, I think, Peter and Diane just coming off the top of Cathedral Mountain as I head back. In general, it's quite easy walking up on the Cathedral Plateau at this point. Nice little tarns, little grassy patches, plenty of rocks in between. Now we're heading back to camp. We've walked all the way down. Now this is Tent Tarn, which we have to go past first. Having passed that, we then come past Chalice Lake again. And this is our group walking along the northern bank of Chalice Lake along the track. Then we leave the track and head off to our campsite once again. So looking back to Chalice Lake, we're now making our way through the bush, up over the rocks. Here's a nice little colourful snow gum that we pass on the way. Lots of interesting vegetation to explore as we do that. Finally, we get close to our tarn where our camp is located. We're almost there, but there's just a little obstacle in the way, a bit of a creek crossing. One giant leap for mankind. Alex shows us how to do that. And then it's back to camp. Next day, it's just a matter of getting back to the cars. So back out to Moses Creek via a slightly different route and back along the track. Firstly, we go past a few tarns. Once again, more tarns, more pencil pine forests on the way. Beautiful country to walk through. And not too difficult walking most of the time, although there's a few scrubby bits and a few scrambles here and there. Finally, we get back to Moses Creek, which is not as full as it was a few days ago. Nevertheless, still requires care in crossing. I'm able to get across with dry feet. Fortunately, it's always nice. Didn't have to take the boots off this time. And then Peter and David show us expertly how it's done. So once across Moses Creek, it's back down the Moses Creek track, down past Grail Falls. Looking back now, much less water in them than there was a few days ago. So we're just about back to the car.